You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Project 365 podcast. Again, I am joined by Josué Sédrjo. We're going to have an Olympic wrap-up episode. Josué, how we doing? How we feeling? Do we like what we saw?
Excited to talk about this. It was a very good game. I don't know if it was necessarily one of those all-time, you'll remember exactly where you were throughout the entire game, but with the finish that this matchup had and the fact that it was on French soil and Team France was in the final going up against a stacked Team USA, made for a great theater, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking about it.
Absolutely. Just to recap the scores, the podium that we have was USA, France finished second, and Serbia finished third. In the gold medal game, we had the United States beating France 98-87. And in our bronze medal game, we had 93-83. Serbia beat Germany. It was really fun, but we're going to focus on our matchup, the USA game, the one that everybody was tuned into. I know there was a lot of discussion going into this game about how the USA was going to do. Is the 92 team better? We're not going to get into that, and all that. But it was very interesting all the way to the lead up because, again, like you said, this kind of led to a kind of finish moment, and we're going to talk about a couple of these things. But Jose, I'm going to give you the floor. Shall we go takeaways? What are some takeaways that we got from this game?
Well, I think we start with the end. I think that's the most fair place to start. It's not the entire story of the game, but at the end of the day, when the game was in the balance, it's Steph Curry with 4 straight threes, with one of them iconically throwing it up over a double team with, by the way, Kevin Durant and LeBron James wide open on the weak side. Just in terms of team construction, how many times are you going to have that outside of an all-star game, which is not a real game? So it's incredible stuff. He finished his last 2 games with combined the semifinals and the finals, 17 of 27 from 3, 8 of 13 in this final. He missed his first 4 shots, so he was essentially 8 for 9. And the last 4 of the game, the ball went to him, and every single time, with it seemed harder and harder level of difficulty on each shot, he made sure to close the deal, which also led to one iconic Getty picture, which is him with his classic night-night celebration, with the camera panning, with zooming on him and having him crystal clear, and then the rest of the crowd a little more blurry. One of those pictures you can absolutely hang in the Louvre. I don't know that, if he doesn't hit those threes that Team USA, he loses. Like, I think their offense had just enough flow that I think they were going to figure it out. In fact, I sense in their demeanor the last, 6-7 minutes that it was, a little more loosey-goosey, hey, we have a 12-point lead. Even if they make a run, we'll just find a way. We have enough weapons to make shots. But the fact that it ended that way kind of punctuated a team effort of the old heads, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. I think they were without question, the emphasis of the team. And at the end of the day, they were the main storyline, and Steph Curry was the top storyline.
It's what was interesting about this USA team is, like you said, there was a lot of players that there was some stories about they had to sacrifice. There was a lot of different players that were coming into that situation. People were talking about how Steph Curry, LeBron, KD, this was a year in the making where they said that this is the last year we're going to make sure that we do it the right way. For me, anyways, looking at this, I think the story has to be something that we talked about in all of our previous podcasts, was just this team is so deep. There's so much depth. There's so much ways that they could attack you and whatnot. And again, it's I was looking at the French bench, and every time Steph Curry was making a shot, it was almost as soon as it released their hands, you could feel oh man, this is going in and whatnot. It was really amazing to watch. But from the French side, what are some things that you noticed? Was there certain things that you taken back from this game? If you're the French side, you're kind of using this as a learning experience for the next Olympics.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back before taking a step forward, because there are more things to acknowledge on the Team USA side. that, like, enough things that went well before we talk about the things that France wasn't able to take away. So first of all, they were 15 to 33 from three. I mean, that's an incredible 3-point percentage. Their defense was by far the most active it was from start to finish the entire tournament, and that's how they won that game, was defense and shooting. France won the offensive rebounding battle 11-10, but USAB won the blocks battle 6-1. So the potential, at least, break even that we were anticipating or thinking if France was going to have a chance to win, needed to break even, they couldn't do that, which was all boards and blocks. They only could do one of the two. France was +4 on turnovers. In fact, Team USA turned the ball over more than Team France, but they couldn't capitalize on points off those turnovers. They were actually -1. So why was that? First of all, Devin Booker was an incredible complementary player. Like, as a connector, as a spacer, as a knockdown 3-point shooter, and especially as an extra passer, not being shot happy and shot hungry, really juiced up Team USA's offense. I think that with having Drew Holiday coming off the bench in this game, it was the perfect change of pace to match up the Evan Fournier minutes that France happened to have off the bench in this game. Now, in the second half, Coach Vincent Collet switched his rotation. It wasn't so much like a starting lineup and a bench lineup, but in the first half, that was a clear intention on Team USA's part, and Drew Holiday was excellent defensively. He only had 3 shot attempts. He made 2 of them. So that part of the Team USA's depth, and not the depth 9 to 12, but like 5 to 8. Anthony Davis' energy was incredible. Like, his commitment to pursuing the offensive glass was definitely key in this game. Again, I don't know if it was like the main factor, but it ensured that France wouldn't have a chance when it came late. And when you look at it, the big takeaway is France can score in key moments, right? Like, Victor Wembanyama's first shift was incredible, between the blocks, the defense, one alley-oop, a self-made dunk. Like, it was unreal. But not a lot of the baskets felt sustainable throughout the game. Gershon Yabusele exploded in the first half, literally and figuratively. Literally with 15 points, figuratively dunking over LeBron James on a poster I'm sure he'll have for the rest of his life at his house. But the fact that he had scored 15 and nobody else was close to him on the scoring chart, that was an advantage Team USA. Because it was the proof that nobody else could either create a shot for themselves, or Team France's ball movement on offense wasn't putting Team USA in rotation sufficiently enough to create multiple advantages over a possession. And we highlighted this going into the game, that it could be a point of contention and a point of weakness for Team France. And once Steph Curry exploded, you came down the other way, and you kind of looked around the court, and you're like, I'm not really sure how France is going to be able to answer not just a good 2-point not just a good 2-point attempt on the offensive end, but a made 3. Like, how can we make sure? We need to match what Steph is doing right now. We have to generate and make a good 3-point attempt. They couldn't do that. They didn't have the personnel for that. Victor tried his damn hardest. Evan Fournier tried his damn hardest. He was much better in the second half than the first half, but they just didn't have the horses to compete with Team USA.
Absolutely. At the conclusion of this, LeBron winning tournament MVP. How impressive is it at age 39 that LeBron still gets to do these things? It's amazing to see. Like, I think we're being spoiled at this point.
We are. No, we are. There's no question about that. And you know, his rim pressure was extremely key, because he was the only player on this team that not only would put pressure on the rim consistently. Anthony Edwards would from time to time. Even Drew Holiday would from time to time. KD tried his damn hardest. But it wasn't just rim pressure. It was rim pressure and playmaking if the rim was taken away. Like, that combination, playmaking, like, without turning the ball over multiple times, yeah, he was the best. He was the best guy down the roster, and he's the oldest. Like, it's incredible stuff.
Yeah. Even I found it fun because you got to see USA kind of using him a bit off the ball. Sometimes Steph setting screens for him to be able to create, or sometimes him off the ball just setting screens and then short rolling. It was actually very fun to see. But we're looking at the All-Star team at the conclusion of this. LeBron, Steph, Dennis, Nikola Jokic, and Victor. How do we like this all tournament team?
I think it's the right selection. Quite frankly, I mean, you can only pick 5 players for the first all tournament team. So obviously, some guys that you'd like to have highlighted are not going to be highlighted. I mean, I think Nikola Jokic can certainly have a key. Sorry, was he named? No, he wasn't named, right?
Nikola Jokic, yes.
Oh, he was. Sorry,
Nikola.
I was thinking Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Yep.
I knew something was wrong. He certainly would have a case to be on that team. I mean, if Serbia beats Team USA, he's certainly on that team.
Yeah.
But I think, like, at the end of the day, all 5 of those players were crucial in their teams getting to the point where they were. I know Germany didn't win a medal, but Dennis Schroeder was the engine that began and ended the Team Germany's offense. Nikola Jokic, we already talked about. Victor Wembanyama, I mean, we're going to get back to him a little bit. But that final, man, for a guy that had struggled with his three-point shot the entire game, to come out 3 for 8, and the level of aggression and focus that a 20-year-old can have in an Olympic final at home is beyond, like, forget the 7-5 part. Like, just the mindset and the approach of a young man, incredibly impressive. And we've talked about LeBron, we've talked about Steph. To me, it's the right team.
I was just gonna get to that. What do you think something like that does for Victor at 20 years old, being able to be named on the team with that kind of competition? What does that do for him, just in terms of like the future of his career? I'm talking about overall. Like, he's going back to the NBA. What are some things that we should potentially expect, and what does that do for France in 2028 potentially?
I think this tournament, specifically the way it went for that team, I think it was an incredible learning experience for him. One of the youngest players, if not the youngest, I believe, on that team. Mathieu Strazel is only 21. I believe Bilal Koulibaly, I think, is 20. I think just turned 20. So I don't exactly sure their date of birth, but those 3 are the 3 youngest players on the team. They went through so many ups and downs. I mean, the round robin, they were left for dead. I mean, that last game against Germany, it would look like the team was broken, and either the pressure was getting to them, or there was a conflict between vets and young players, or the coaches. Do they have a good sense of the priorities in terms of the hierarchy on the team on offense? All kinds of questions like that. And to come out of that with some clear leadership display by the older veterans of the team, he was able to learn from that. He was able to figure out how, I mean, they somewhat switched their offensive approach midway through the tournament. He got to live and experience through that. Oh, by the way, all throughout being at home and the pressure that comes with that. Like, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And, you went against Team USA. Like, all these guys that are, quote-unquote, the best players in the world. 3 of them who were the best players in the world. 3 of them who are inarguably top 15, top 10 players of all time. So that level of experience, forget this NBA campaign. I think for the rest of his career, this is an experience he's going to be able to draw upon for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you make a fair point, because you're probably never going to play as good of a starting 5. You're probably never going to play that.
At home, with the pressure of being at home, with what that team had gone through, like that entire scenario, like, you can't replicate that as an experience. And obviously, he's called to being the best player in the NBA, maybe one of the greatest players of all time, winning multiple titles, being a leader on such team. Well, you need to learn from leadership examples. We do believe the young man is wired the right way. I mean, if you talk to him, you talk to people around him, like, yes, he's wired in the right way, but there's nothing like experience. And he's just had an unbelievable experience that he's going to be able to draw upon for the rest of his career.
So, we get the chance to be to see this kind of gameplay in every single level. Like, what are, will we say, 3 lessons that I think individually we'll go with 3 lessons that we took from this Olympic campaign. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
You should go first.
You should go first? Okay. So, looking at this from a coaching standpoint, I think that this has the potential of being one of the most impactful Olympics on how we look at the game of basketball, right? For me, what was interesting to see was there was so many different ways that if you're looking at the North American teams, they got caught off guard on a lot of different things. If we're talking about after timeouts, if we're talking about sets, right? Because on our North American side, I'm gonna say, like, we have we're so used to just being able to play a certain kind of way. I think that team concept, and you're looking at that IQ concept, a lot of these European teams really took advantage of the fact that we don't play that kind of game, right? So on the FIBA stage, I think a lot of times, like, certain of our players, in a way, whether it's on the Canadian side or the US side, I think they got the opportunity to, see certain things that they weren't used to being seen. I'm thinking about, even from a coaching standpoint, right? One thing that I'm kind of taking away from this is I got to be way sharper with my X's and O's, man. Just like, I'm looking at some of the sets that some of these coaches are using. After timeouts, if you decide to relax after timeouts, it's not just get the ball in. They're using every single timeout, every single time that they have, right? Especially in the game where there's not that much stoppage, right? You think in North America, we have a lot of chance where, like, the game stops a lot. We have a lot of timeouts and all that kind of stuff. But, like, you feel there's more of a flow to that game. You close your eyes, there's less time. You close your eyes, and then it's halfway through the game. And then if you dug a hole for yourself, you're kind of in that weird situation. But then I definitely also think that player development and the skill sets are ways that coaches, player development people have to start paying more attention to, because when you get on the FIBA stage, you have the ability to, like, attack matchups and attack the game in a different way that you may not necessarily be able to look at. I was talking to you beforehand, and I was saying, like, for me, the biggest example of that, the big eye-glaring one, was the fact that Rudy Gobert being 7'2" doesn't necessarily mean that we have the advantage with size, right? You saw France at a certain point, they had to remove Rudy Gobert from that lineup. And then they decided to put a big that maybe is not as big, but the play style and the skill was more matching to what they needed in that moment. So I think that's my first takeaway. You want to give me your first? And by all means, what do you think? What do you think about mine? Like,
I wanted to touch on yours first. Like,
yep.
This Olympic is definitely one that we can look at as a something point. I don't know that it's a turning point, but it's something point. And the reason for that is, I don't think this is on the level of 1992 with the first time that NBA players being allowed to play. It's not on that level. It's not on the level of 2004 with Team USA completely flailing, losing against Greece, losing against Argentina, and Team Argentina's beautiful game, like, becoming the clear evidence of where the game was heading. It's not on the level of those two, but it's certainly the first tournament where you had multiple MVPs of non-American descent on other teams that made the Olympics. Meaning the overall talent pool is now not just rising, but rising on a logarithmic function. Like, rising to a level that it's not going to take 3 more Olympics before somebody else can beat Team USA, with Team USA applying the right strategy. Like, I think we're 1, if not 2 away tops. Again, assuming development at the domestic level in those countries. So that's the first part. But on the other level, I think from our standpoint in North America, I think the reality of the FIBA game and some of the nuances that you think is not that important are absolutely important. Mm-hmm. Less time, less fouls, smaller court, like, one game, that matters. This is not a 7-game series. And even if you think, like, oh, sure, it's not that big, it's a factor, but it's not that big of a deal. No, all of those individually are a big factor, and then combined, it's an even bigger factor. So that's all I'd add to what you said. Absolutely.
You want to go to your first?
Sure. My first takeaway is quite simple. It's not really anything rocket science. The depth of players 9 through 12 is overrated. And what I mean by that is, looking at Team Canada, looking at Team USA, they were the two teams with the most NBA players. And when you stack up the entire list of names, and if you had assigned a numerical value to each of those players, the sum of those players would most likely be the highest on both tournaments. The thing is, you really need depth of players 9 through 12 only in the case of an injury. Because at the end of the day, as a coach, it's really hard to extend a rotation beyond 8 players, max 9. And so what that meant is, when I'm trying to evaluate evaluate and power rank the strength of a team, thinking of how players 9 through 12 are an additive value to a team is not. I'm not gonna say it's not important, but I need to make sure it's not overblown, because and you saw that with Team USA, where multiple times 2, sometimes 3 players played under 5 minutes. Those players are great players. It's the fact they're not playing doesn't mean they're not great players. It just means in the context of this team, this tournament, this event, Eurobasket, the World Cup, the Olympics, the team should be assessed as the top 9. And after that, the rest is, well, if we get an injury, if we have a suspension, like in a pinch, can somebody fill in? That's how you should need to evaluate the team.
I like that. That kind of leads it to my second point. Like, I think the importance of roster construction, right? We're looking at the USA and how they built their team. There was a lot of, not controversy. There was a lot of people talking because it wasn't controversy. If you're watching basketball, you understand that for this specific team, players like Drew Holiday and Derek White have high value because these are players that don't necessarily need the ball, that can play off the ball, that can make decisions, that don't need, I'm going to call it rhythm, right? Whereas if you're looking at someone like on the Canadian side with Jamal Murray was more of a rhythm player that wasn't in rhythm, right? Where it's like, how do I help him get his rhythm? So I think in terms of roster construction, I think being able to understand that who your main guys are and how do you need to play around. But I think it's also important to value that you got to have some flexibility to attack certain matchups. And I'm thinking automatically my brain goes to France, right? For them to be able to have the ability to just switch up and just go to different kind of bigs. Those are bigs, but different kind of bigs with a different skill set. I think that allowed them to push through and in a way play that chess game with the teams that they encountered in the first and second round. Because I don't think, and to be honest, I got caught with that personally, where it was like, I kind of thought that France was going to attack that game with the 2 bigs that they always had. But then when they come out with Yabusele, boom, the chess game happens. So I think that one is a very valuable one. You want to go your second one?
Yeah, it's related. It's not related to roster construction, but it emphasizes it. In one game scenarios, anything can happen. Like we say that, let's say kind of in a cliche manner within the basketball community, very easily. Oh, anything can happen. Oh, it's just one game. Like, oh man, like this guy could explode for 40. Like, who knows what happened? I don't think this level of competition, and I'll add the Eurobasket, I'll add the World Cup to these Olympics in terms of this level of FIBA play, because I think to me those are by far the three biggest level of competition. Some may even argue Eurobasket is the most because you simply have more quality teams from Europe. It's not that any man, any player, any player can score 40 points in an Olympic game. It's that for 3 minutes, somebody can score 6 points or create 6 blocks or 6 stops that switches the game. And that player may not have played a single minute the game before, and in this game, in this matchup, because he's either inspired or put in the right position to play or has the right matchup, well, for these 6 minutes, he has the 6-minute stretch of his life, and it turns around the game. There's multiple examples, I think, in this tournament of guys who didn't play much in one game, but played a big role in another game. In the final, we mentioned Gershon Yabusele had 15 points in the first half. He was on his way to being if France was going to win, like, he was going to win man of the match because he was incredible. He ended up guarding LeBron James because he was the best resistant to the point of attack for Team France. I don't know if he did an amazing job, but like he wasn't getting trucked the way everybody else was.
He was their best option for sure. Their best option. Mm-hmm.
In the round robin, he played the 3 instead of the 4, and he was lost. He couldn't figure out a rhythm. His 3-point shot was failing him. He wasn't a factor. Inversely, Isaiah Cordinier didn't score in the final, and his first 2 dribble pull-up threes against Team Canada set the tone for Team France to advance to the next round. That's a perfect example of how in an Olympic game, in a one-game scenario, where you combine you almost like compress the entire storyline of a 7-game series into one. Like you are living a 7-game series in 40 minutes instead of 7 times 48 minutes. And because of that, one game, yes, anything can truly happen without necessarily implying something outrageous can happen.
I like that. I think for me, my final one is pretty. My last lesson is pretty like general, but I think it speaks volume. I think it's just like you're just seeing like, I don't know if it's because of social media and because of like gameplay, because of like the coverage, but you're truly really seeing the growth of the game worldwide. If that wasn't highlighted in, we did a draft episode. France getting 3 tops picks, 3 lottery picks this year, back to back 1 and 2. Like, I mean, if that doesn't speak to the volume of how the game is growing worldwide, you're looking at more nations being competitive, and I'm just automatically thinking of South Sudan, right? It was something that's very, it's very insightful, it's very empowering, but I think it also provides a lot of value to where the game of basketball can go, right? I hope that more people tune into EuroLeague because it's amazing basketball over there. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah,
last one.
I
yeah.
I completely agree. We have the same last one.
Yes.
The field is getting stronger and stronger. I mean, seeing Yuki Kawamura exploding for Team Japan against France and simultaneously landing an Exhibit 10 deal with the Memphis Grizzlies the day after. I don't know. I know this wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. At the beginning of the tournament, for me, who was the 12th best team out of 12 in the field. Like, if that's not telling on the overall level of competition, I don't know what is. And beyond that, I think for African countries, looking at what South Sudan did in this tournament, and a lot of those guys are young, they're only going to get better. The program and the operations for that team is only going to get better. If you're an African team, you got to look at that and say, okay, we have an opportunity to not just come to the Olympics, but do something special. And this this has been very, very low level chatter. This may be the time where the Olympic field is ready to be expanded. Between so many Eurobasket teams being good, between some certainly some African talent, individual talent emerging. I don't know what teams, but talent certainly emerging. And then if by any chance Argentina, Brazil are going to be able to continue to go back to the old days and develop better domestic talent, it's very possible we're in a place in 4 years where a 16-team tournament makes sense. One, from a competition level standpoint, and two, that point differential, cumulative score, head-to-head record wasn't necessarily popular with the fans, wasn't really popular with like everyday people who follow the tournament. So one way to simplify that is just make a 16-team field when the top 2 advance. So that might be something to explore for 2028.
You know what's crazy? I wrote that down, but then I did my research. I learned a lot from you. I did my research. I went back and I saw there was only 12 teams since like 92. So I'm like, nah, right. They're not gonna do that. So I didn't even bother. But yeah, think about it. This tournament, we missed out on Latvia, who did really good, right? Slovenia, we didn't have Luka. Could you imagine like just having like 2 extra teams like that, where it's like somebody like Kristaps Porzingis and Luka didn't participate?
I mean, I'll add Lithuania to that list. I'll add Croatia to that list. There's been. I'm looking at how Lauren Markkinen just got paid. I don't know that Team Finland would have competed at this level, but I know I'm looking at Team Japan, Team Brazil. Like they could at the very least put together a roster that would be competitive with those teams. So there's no question in my mind 16 teams are good enough to make the Olympics. It's just a matter of logistics standpoint. Is the IOC going to be, and IOC and FIBA going to be willing to change? History says no. Let's see how 2028 takes place.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we? We're gonna end this with one thing that we are looking forward. After these Olympics, what did we see? Do you want to go first with this one?
Sure, I'll go first. Mine is almost boring. I felt lazy writing this down, but I just kept going back to it because that's literally all my mind can think of. Where's Victor taking us this year? I mean, to see this young man perform at this level again throughout the tournament, but especially in the eliminating rounds, and I don't think we can spend enough time on highlighting the fact that this man shot 4 of 17, was not good offensively, is still exploring the real estate from his offensive game, and comes to the final and shoots 11 and 19, and has like the first shift. I allow my mind to think like, I don't think so, but I might see something I've never seen before. I might see like the greatest Olympic final performance of my life. There's a 1%, 5% chance this may happen just because of how incredibly focused he was at the start of this game. And to see him take that and bring it to the NBA season, can he get on the MVP ballot? Can the Spurs make the playoffs? Like, with this guy, stuff that for regular top number one, top overall picks, quote unquote generational prospects would be the norm. You have to raise those norms for him. Like, you have to allow your mind to go to those crazy spaces just for him. And that's what the number one takeaway for me in this NBA season is: how good is he going to become, and can Chris Paul give him all the tricks? Like all the tricks of the pick and roll game, of the screening game. That's where my eye will be on. What about you?
I think for me, looking forward to the NBA season, I'm very interested to see, does this Olympic campaign for some of these players, does this propel them in their careers, right? So I have a couple of examples here. I'm looking at Bogan Bogdanovic. You showed your stuff on that stage. Like you gained some experience, but I think you gained the attention of a lot of people of how valuable your skill set is. You're looking at playing for the Hawks now. We know they have a situation where they're trying to figure out if the Trae Young Risache combination, can they get from that? But you add Bogdanovic to that, you have a lot of size and you have a lot of skill on the floor at the same time. So I think like that potentially could be valuable. Somebody else that I was looking at was RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett being that consistent on the Canadian side, I loved his aggression. I love how consistent Canada was able to rely on him in a FIBA type of setting. Now, in an NBA kind of setting, does the mentality of being able to do that on the world stage, does that translate to his situation in the NBA? Does he come back and be more consistent from three? Is he still providing that same kind of rim pressure, right? So, and lastly, obviously, I'm going to use Anthony Edwards, right? You're on the team that is expected to be a contender. You are around all these great players for a summer. What did you take away from that kind of experience? How do you apply that to the next level? Does that help you push? Does that... Because he showed characteristics of being a leader on this Minnesota team. Does that push that even further? That's something that I'm definitely going to be looking forward to. Yeah.
To add to that point,
yeah.
Like I think him, Tyrese Halliburton, Devin Booker, I'll throw lightly Jason Tatum, but not that much. I'll add maybe Bam Adebayo, maybe. Mm-hmm. The younger guys, often in the history of Team USA, the younger guy that was like quote unquote star in the making, a pretty good player, that goes to Team USA, wins a gold medal, and comes back and becomes a great player. There's a long history of that. The most flagrant example is LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and Dwayne Wade coming back from 2008 Olympics and all being MVP candidates immediately the year after, just from being around Kobe Bryant the entire summer. There's always, since that, there's always been an example of guys coming back and just elevating their game. Or any of those guys have learned not so much on the court stuff, but off the court tricks of the trade from the quote unquote old heads that they can bring into the season. Like, yeah, you highlight Anthony Edwards, but I'll push it further and extend it to all the young guys on the roster. Which of those guys can raise their game to a level by just being around such greatness?
I think it's definitely something that we're going to keep tabs on during this NBA season. Jose, final thoughts. By the way, this has been great. I appreciate you being with me to just cover these Olympics. One thing to look forward in 2028 as we look forward to Los Angeles?
So, okay, there's a few things here. So, number one, we're gonna have a Eurobasket tournament next year, God willing. That needs to be highlighted. That's 2025. Then 2027, we're gonna have another World Cup, and then we're gonna have the Olympics. So we're gonna have and I believe 2027 we also have Eurobasket as well. I mean, I think they're still gonna do it even though there's a World Cup. So what that means is we're gonna get multiple chances to see a lot of these players perform in the international stage. And develop their skill. But for me, the number one question that I have, we are assuming that this domestic development that we saw exemplifying these Olympics outside of Team USA is going to continue. We don't know if it'll grow at a 5, 10, 25, 50, 100% rate to the level to catch up to Team USA. I don't know about that, but it will continue to grow. But for Team USA themselves, who's going to be the heir apparent to this generation of Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Steph Curry? Who's going to be the guy when we come to 2028 that everybody looks to and says, that's the guy. That's the leader of this team. That's the guy that is the quote-unquote alpha. You mentioned Anthony Edwards. Is it going to be him? We haven't mentioned about Jason. We haven't talked much about Jason Tatum and his lack of playing time, or whether it was justified or not. Is he going to take this experience and turn into elevating his game to even a bigger level, to a level where it's undeniable that he's the alpha of this team? John Morant wasn't considered for these Olympics. Is it him? Is it Zion Williamson wasn't considered? Is it him? Does, a Kawhi Leonard, a Paul George, a Kyrie Irving, not the old heads of the LeBron KD Steph generation, but like the age group right under, do they have still something in them at that time? Who's going to be that alpha? That's what I have my mind on for 2028. What about yourself?
I'm going to look at those FIBA rankings and I'm going to see, starting from now, who does the biggest jump, how much of a change there is in there, right? Obviously, we know that, like you said, you highlighted that there's going to be a lot of competition going into that before the next Olympics. But how much of a change, how much competition there is with those people that are, with those organizations, that are ranked high and up and coming. That's going to be something that I'm going to look forward to. And I think at the end, it's making me question and think, to circle back to what you had said about the possibility of maybe having more teams. Again, I'm looking like in 2028, is there a chance to make it a 4-group tournament? We said it was unlikely, but I think it could be like really fun. But I'm happy that you highlighted the tournaments going into it before, because we're going to get the chance to see so many different athletes, so many different teams. And, as we were surprised during these Olympics, we're probably going to be surprised and see certain things that we didn't expect on seeing to the lead up to LA in 2028.
That's right.
Josué, any final thoughts? Anything?
No, that's it. I think I had a certain expectation going to these Olympics in terms of the quality of basketball that I wanted to see from a game-to-game standpoint. I had hopes of a Team Canada medal. Unfortunately, those were not met, but it's part of the sport sometimes. Sometimes your team wins, sometimes it doesn't. But overall, a great Olympic tournament, a lot of lessons, a lot of takeaways from it, and let's see what takes place in the NBA season, which is only 60 days away, 70 days away already. So time flies.
Yeah, we're going to take some time to decompress a little bit after this. But yes, this was our Olympic recap episode. Make sure to sub. Make sure to follow Josué on all the platforms where he is. And Josué, I appreciate you taking the time to go over these things during the past month. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise, man. Hope all our listeners enjoyed, and look forward for more content from us moving forward.